What's up guys, Nor here and welcome to Book of Showtime Chapter 39. As always, if you enjoy these videos, be sure to like and share with your friends, and if you have a topic you'd like for me to cover for Book of Showtime, be sure to leave it in the comment section down below or anywhere you can reach me on social media or the Book of Showtime Discord. So my friend Ben says, build a roster for a NetherRealm horror fighting game. NetherRealm Studios are the developers behind the legendary Mortal Kombat series and the Injustice fighting games, and every now and then they do tend to surprise us with some elite guest characters. Whereas other fighting games are flashy and vibrant and have this unique style to them, NetherRealm games tend to be dark, gritty, and brutal, which is perfect for our fighting game that we're constructing here today, where most of the cast are composed of ruthless killers. Now to begin this roster construction, we're going to bring in the legacy fighters, and these are all horror characters that have appeared in previous NetherRealm games, and that would be Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Alien, Predator, Leatherface, and Spawn. These are all stone cold horror icons, that goes without saying, and it's a shame we kind of didn't get Freddy in MKX or 11, as the characters all interact with each other, and Freddy Krueger is a tremendous trash talker. As for Spawn, I know he's not technically a horror villain, but you're going to need somebody to keep these monsters in check. Next, we're going to move on to characters that we have mentioned in previous Book of Showtime chapters, and that's Art the Clown, Michael Myers, and Leon S. Kennedy. It's interesting that I mentioned Art the Clown and Myers together because with Myers, his story has come to an end and Art's is just beginning. Now, at the time of this recording, I haven't seen the second Terrifier movie and I kind of don't want to. The first one was gross and I heard this one is much worse and I have a weak stomach, I'll be honest. But no, it is interesting because you have one icon in horror on his way out and one budding cult figure on his way in. As for Leon, you guys know I've wanted Leon in a fighting game for years now. We talked about this back in the PlayStation All-Stars chapter. Leon, he's a seasoned vet when it comes to fighting zombies, cultists, bioweapons, and his feelings for Ada Wong. So all of these guys, they would be coming along for the ride too. Now onto today's picks. I actually split the picks between heroes and villains because sometimes the heroes, they're just as important or just as iconic as their counterparts, but let us begin with the evil side. We'll save the goods for last. Number 1, Sadako Yamamura. Let's begin with everyone's favorite Onryo. I think the original Ringu movie was elite levels of horror. In fact, that movie and Ju-on are so much better than the American remakes. Minor spoiler here, but what I like about Ringu is you only see Sadako once. The entire movie was kind of just teasing her arrival with the 7 days rule. In fact, the cursed tape itself is more creepy than her iconic entrance. That tape was really unsettling. Sadako is a little bit more in the spotlight these days with her inclusion in Dead by Daylight last year, and rightfully so. She's awesome. What inspired this pick was actually Hisako from Killer Instinct, showing that angry Japanese ghost girls, they do have a place in fighting games. And I know a certain cryptid witch just perked up hearing Killer Instinct get a shout out. Number 2, Amanda Young. Now here we have our first non-monster or special power having villain on this list. Amanda is but a former drug addict and Jigsaw victim, but she was eventually quote-unquote saved and reformed by Jigsaw himself, working as his apprentice as he carries out his twisted games. Does Amanda have any supernatural abilities? No. Is she large and intimidating? No. But she is cunning and crafty. Her playstyle will have all sorts of nefarious traps and gadgets to control the pace and fight her opponents on her terms. And if they have fatalities in this game, which come on, you have to have a fatality in this type of game, she would have to bring the iconic reverse bear trap that she herself once wore. The Saw movies, they're actually my favorite horror movies, and I know that might be like a pariah-esque statement, but listen, they're extremely fun to binge, although they get rough after 4 or 5. But like with almost every horror movie franchise, they just suffer from over-sequelization. Like Jigsaw was terrible. I haven't even seen Spiral. It looked terrible from the trailers. But hopefully this new one is good. Still though, I'd love to see my favorite horror movie get a rep in this game, and Amanda is my favorite character from that series, and I'm glad she's back in Saw 10. Number 3, Pinhead. Did you know Clive Barker, who wrote the books Hellraiser is based on, he actually hates the Pinhead name? Which I can see that, as Hell Priest is a lot cooler and more fitting than Pinhead. Also, when I think of Pinhead, I'm going to think of SpongeBob, that episode where they were stuck in Sandy's dome and it was winter. Let me know down below if you think you can be Dirty Dan. Now, the Hell Priest, or the lead Cenobite, he's an interesting character because he kind of wasn't the main villain in the original movie. He was very polite to Christy Cotton when he came. Sure, he was going to kidnap her and torture her to the point of not being able to distinguish pain from pleasure, but he was a gentleman about it. Now, I've only seen the first movie, and there's actually like 10 of these things, which again, with horror movies being over-sequelized. Maybe because they're all cheap. I mean, it's rare to get a horror movie that cost over $75 million. Halloween Kills? That only cost like $20 million to make, which is wild to me, but I digress. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend to know the ins and outs of Pinhead's or Hellpriest's power, but his durability would be off the charts, and we certainly would see some chain-based magic similar to what he uses in Dead by Daylight. Maybe even some of his attacks would see him bring in other Cenobites for a quick assist. There's a lot of other Cenobites with pretty good designs too. You got the Chatterer, and you got the fat dude with the glasses. Maybe those could be alts. Number 4, Albert Wesker. Again, we will never go through chapters like this without mentioning Resident Evil. I sort of do miss Wesker, as there hasn't been an overarching evil in the Resident Evil series like him since his demise in Resident Evil 5 back in 2008. Wesker, he's ruthless, he's cynical, and he will do anything to achieve his goals. Use anyone, he has no friends, only his vision. Wesker has modified and enhanced his body with first the T-Virus and then Ouroboros, which has given him super speed and super strength to go along with unfathomable amounts of durability. As shown in Resident Evil 4 and 5's mercenary modes, he has tremendous hand-to-hand abilities, using various forms of martial arts to bring a swift and violent end to his foes. Wesker is one of my favorite characters in the entire Resident Evil series, and he's shown up in fighting games before with Marvel vs. Capcom, but his brutality in a NetherRealm game would be much more true to his character. Number 5, the Doctor. Now at this point, some of you might notice that all 5 characters to this point have appeared in Dead by Daylight. I swear that wasn't intentional, but it kind of just goes to show how much of a reach Dead by Daylight has these days. But the Doctor himself is an original character from Dead by Daylight, and one of the better ones too. His past as a black site interrogator would fit in well with the ruthless gallery we've constructed so far. Now, most of the killers in Dead by Daylight tend to be actually good people before something really bad happens, but Herman Carter, he embraces his evil, using electroconvulsive treatment on many of his victims. His powers in Dead by Daylight inflict survivors with madness, causing hallucinations and just making life miserable on many levels for them and their teammates. I was actually genuinely afraid of the Doctor when I first got into Dead by Daylight. He was creepy. Like, that first time I seen that jump scare, nothing tops that. Having that madness on you, dude, it was like the super cooties. Number 6, Megan. Now, how they would fit a 4-foot fighter into this game, I don't know, but it would be really interesting. They could take some creative liberties with Megan, as, spoiler, the OS of Megan is still alive, so maybe a new body. You can kill the bot, but not the idea. I actually really enjoyed Megan. I watched it earlier this year with my friends, and like I mentioned at the top of this video, it feels like the groundwork is being laid for a new generation of slasher figures, with Art getting his time in the sun and a Megan sequel inevitably coming down the pipeline. It's all going to be a matter of time due to all these strikes going on, which I hope everything is resolved soon. But Megan, though, she would be a great trash talker. It's good to have trash talkers in games like this. Number 7, Claudia Wolf. Now, I know the Cryptid Witch just sat up fully for this one. You guys might not know Claudia, and those of you that do might wonder why I didn't go with someone like Pyramid Head. Well, in a game like this, a bit of personality goes a long way, and while Pyramid Head is synonymous with Silent Hill, Silent Hill 3 is the best one in my humble opinion, and Claudia would be a welcome change of representation. Imagine the conversations between her and Wesker, 2 absolute psychopaths who think they're gods looking to take over the world. That would just be, oh man, it would be an ego trip that, yo, come on, that would be insane. Claudia, she has some pretty good telekinetic powers, so maybe a darker version of Kenshi, or actually Ermac would fit the bill, and maybe because Silent Hill's in the game that we get Akira Yamaoka to compose a track or 2? Imagine Mick Gordon and Akira Yamaoka on the same soundtrack. Cue up that Kobe and Shaq highlight video. Number 8, Magician. Now, if you thought Claudia was a left field pick, then I can't imagine what you'd have to say about Magician. Magician is the final boss of the original House of the Dead, and while I did briefly ponder picking other final bosses from the House of the Dead series, I decided to stick with the OG, especially since we had the remake of House of the Dead drop last year. Now, have you guys actually played a House of the Dead game to completion? Why are the game's common enemies just various zombies using household equipment, and then the boss is Infinity Ultron? What is the basis there? And why do these godlike creatures come to life and immediately always turn on your creators? That happens in like anything where somebody creates a monster. The monster just goes, yeah, I'm much better than you, so I'm not gonna listen to you. So they create this god in like the bottom of this mansion lab, and then the god just also dies to handguns being wielded by 2 sweaty, overworked field agents. Like, why not just make a super zombie, you know, instead of Kurt Angle with the Sharingan? It makes no sense at all. Also, Cryptid Witch, Let's Play House of the Dead 4. I actually found a place to download it for PS3 so we can emulate it. Alright, now that this roster is stacked with villains, let's move on to the hero side. Number 1, Ash Williams. This kind of goes without saying, but you can't have a NetherRealm horror fighter without Ash. It's a shame we haven't gotten him yet in Mortal Kombat, as he has a deep bag of weapons and tricks and has a ton of personality to boot. He'd be a pleasure to have in any game. You know, the chainsaw, the boomstick, the sweet hair. This is a man built to face evil. I actually watched Evil Dead for the first time last year. I was too scared to watch it as a kid. You know, go ahead and make fun of me. It's a very good flick. Ash has kind of cemented himself as the evil fighter. When you think of people who fight evil, you got to think of Ash. And there's plenty of evil across the aisle for him to tangle with. Number 2, Laurie Strode. You can't have the shape and not have the babysitter. While Laurie was victimized that fateful Halloween night, the years have turned her from prey to hunter. She's been preparing for this type of showdown for 40 years. You know how on sight it's going to be for any monster or killer when you've been plotting on smoke for 40 years? Laurie Strode is an iconic figure in horror, and it took a few retcons and reboots to make her what she is today, but you best believe she's ready to fight any evil to protect those she cares about. Number 3, Van Helsing. Now this is an interesting pick because Van Helsing is a mantle more than anything. There's been many takes on the character. In fact, when you look at the history of the monster archetypes, Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, mummies, werewolves, zombies, there's been many takes on those characters. And the only thing that exists on the opposite end of the spectrum is Van Helsing, or at least someone with that name. But you guys see where I'm going with this. There's been many games, movies, and books depicting the adventures and exploits of Van Helsing clan members, and although Van Helsings tend to scrap with vampires, they'd have no issues fighting any type of monsters causing trouble. It'd be very nice to have a modern take on a vampire hunter. Like, the most recent prominent vampire hunters that come to mind to me are Blade and Buffy Summers. But a Van Helsing, you know, it offers a lot more creative flexibility. I think that would be a better spot. Number 4, RJ MacReady. The Cryptid Witch is now salivating a little. RJ was the protagonist of John Carpenter's The Thing, and first off, look, any excuse to get Kurt Russell involved, you take it, okay? Kurt Russell is cool. Now, although The Thing has an iconic ending which left MacReady's fate up to interpretation, there's been a game and comics showing that RJ isn't done fighting, well, things. You know, I don't know how else to phrase it. That's the villain, the Thing. Like, you had Alien, and then you had Aliens, and here you would have Thing, and then some things? See what I did there? Come on, that was good, okay? Don't hate. I think that was a really good joke. Now, RJ wasn't exactly a soldier by trade, but he's certainly taken up the mantle to fight these monsters as long as he can, however he can. That's what I like about characters like this. These are ordinary people, but they just said, F it, it's between you or me, and I prefer me. Kurt Russell burning Sadako with a flamethrower, that would be quite the image. Number 5, Alice Abernathy. What's this? More Resident Evil? But hey, listen, don't worry, it's not the games, it's actually the movies. This is a direct counter to Wesker. It's actually a little surprising that the movies, and namely Alice, haven't crossed over with the games, but the movies are actually kind of mid, so maybe that's a good thing? Anyway, Alice, like Wesker, is infected, and similar to Wesker, it's enhanced her abilities to superhuman levels. Plus, Alice is a very powerful telepath. In the third movie, while she was paralyzed, she reached deep into space and disabled this tiny chip inside of a satellite. Come on, come on. In addition to her powers, she's extremely talented with firearms and close-range combat, so Alice, she's not one to be messed with. Number 6, Samantha Maxis. Guess what? Call of Duty time! I know you don't associate Call of Duty with horror per se, but the Zombies mode has been a prominent fixture of Call of Duty since 2008, and while the levels of horror have gotten lower and lower with zombies, the game still has its moments where it tries to creep you out a bit. Samantha has been part of the Zombies canon since day one as the driving force controlling the zombies. In the Dark Ether storyline introduced in Black Ops Cold War, Sam is all grown up, traveling around the world fighting zombies where she can. Samantha Maxis is a hardened soldier. She's been fighting the Dark Ether a long time and in many timelines. In addition to her proficiencies as a soldier, she's also inherited some serious powers. These, combined with the various tools that Requiem has developed to fight zombies, Samantha is capable of slaying any foe, no matter what dimension or what size. Alright guys, that's it for the NetherRealm horror roster. Let me know what you think of my picks. Let me know who you would add. Inshallah, I will see you in the next chapter.